Well, welcome to another session of Be Kinetic. In our session number 6, I started up a conversation around how can we be more influential? What should we as leaders be focusing on? And we took a couple of minutes and we looked at what do we as leaders, or how do we as leaders believe in our people? And the reality is that if we don't believe in our people, we're going to treat them in a certain way. We're going to interact with them in a certain way. Versus if we do believe in them, if we see them as people of value, if we see them as people that are going to make a contribution, that are going to fix problems, that are going to help us reach targets, is we're going to talk to them in a different way. We're going to share certain information that we wouldn't if we didn't believe in them. And so I want to pick up from that to bring in a couple of other points to say, firstly, we need to believe in our people. And if we don't, we need to evaluate our own hearts, our own mindsets, our own belief systems. But the second one that I'd like us to talk about is the whole notion of what we focus on. What do we talk about? So many times is that we will say this and this happens to be important, but in our meetings, in our day-to-day conversations, is we talk about a whole lot of other things. And so workers, they don't really read what is in our formal statements. And again, maybe if I can talk in the safety arena, is that so often is in the documents, in the vision statements, is we'll say things like this, that safety first, and safety is our number one priority, and zero harm. But then in our production meetings, safety is many times an afterthought. And so what do? Is we spend a lot of time talking about production and about meeting targets and about working hard, but safety is almost an afterthought. And so because our conversation gravitates around production, is what do people hear? What do people think about? What do people perceive to be what's important? Well, it's obviously what we as leaders communicate. Where are we focused on? What are we talking about? And so again, if I can use the safety environment as a classic example, if we want our people to meet targets and to do it safely, well, then that's what we must talk about. So if we were in a meeting, we'd say, guys, we're under pressure today and we need to meet this target. We've got to reach this deadline. And how should we do it safely? And we bring in the safety concept within our discussion of production. If maybe you are in a sales environment, is that yesterday I was in a meeting, it was such a classic, because what happened is that they obviously have to reach a certain amount of sales, but for them what was important is that there'd also be something of this customer experience. And so I was asking a colleague to say, well, how much do you talk about just sales, and how many times in the conversation of reaching these sales targets are we introducing the notion of having these wow customer experiences? And so if that is neglected and we only talk about meeting sales targets, that's what people will think, I need to reach this target, and the fact that a customer enjoys the experience or not is irrelevant. And so we as leaders, we need to go, how am I influencing these situations? What do I want my people to be thinking about? And am I speaking about it? Am I making that prominent within the way I interact with people, the way when we discuss certain things that we're going, this is critical to us. The next point is very similar to the previous point around what is our focus, and it comes back to what are we measuring? What are we controlling? Because if we say that we want safe production, but all we're doing is measuring production, again, it's sending this message out that what's truly important to us is not safety, but it's on production. And so if we want people to behave safely and meet production, we need to be measuring production as well as meeting safety. But not only that, is that what are we measuring? So again, in the safety community, is so often what I see is people are measuring these lagging indicators. And it's sending this message that we are reactive when it comes to safety, because typically it would be the lost time injury frequency rate. Now that has already taken place. Someone has already been injured. There's already been this near miss. And so we're measuring these type of things, and it's sending this message that we are not proactive to the degree that we should be. But if we define our leading indicators so that we can take a proactive approach, it's sending this message that's saying, you know what, we don't want to just wait for an incident to take place, is that we want to have a mindset, we want to have a culture where we are taking this resilience approach when it comes to meeting our targets, but we want to avoid any incidents and not kind of after the fact, oh my goodness, let's fix it. And the same is when it comes to meeting sales targets or people's performance, is what are we measuring? How are we measuring it? So if I can go back to the previous example of we want to meet sales targets, but how happy do we want to keep our people, our clients? And so we might be reaching targets, but our people feel that they are pushing the product onto their client. The client is putting their back out. So we may reach a target this month, but we're busy losing clients in the process because we're not measuring that. And so if we want to be more effective as a leader, we've got to be asking ourselves, first is, how do we believe? What do we believe about our people? Is it healthy? Is it getting us the results we want? And then what are we talking about? What are we focusing our attention on? And then what are we measuring? Is it going to get us the results that we are looking for? The next one, and I kind of laugh because it's almost an awkward situation because it's so serious. And this is, how do we react to critical moments, and particularly when something goes wrong? Because I'm convinced that there are very few things that reveal what we truly believe than how we react to an incident or to when there's a crisis or when something goes wrong. And for me, it was really unfortunate, well, in a certain sense, a positive situation, is I had a friend that was working at home, and he was doing some work on his ceiling, and it happened that he fell off the ladder. And it was just so heartwarming to see that as he was going to hospital, he broke his arm and some ligaments, and the senior management of that mine came to the hospital, and there was a card and a gift basket from the mine saying, you know what, this is so sad, and we care about you, and we can't wait for you to be at work. And when the managers came and visited him, they were kind of going, take your time, we just want you to be safe, and we want you to be healthy, and when you are ready, then come back to work. And that was such a positive message that we care about people. And this is where it became unfortunate, is about a month later, a worker happened to be doing something similar, working at heights, also on a ladder, and he happened to fall off. And to see the vast difference, because immediately there was something of the approach is, who did this? Who was involved in this incident? It wasn't, the first reaction wasn't, we care, oh my goodness, are they okay? The first reaction was, A, who did it? And B, why did it take place? And so the response was, let's investigate, because we, as managers, we don't want to get into trouble because now this person has damaged our safety record. And that sent such a strong message in two ways. First is, we actually don't care about all people. So we care about our manager, because the first incident happens to be a manager, but the workers, we don't truly care about that. Now, I happen to know the managers, and I know that wasn't their heart, I know that wasn't their intention, but unfortunately, that is the message that came across. So firstly, it told people that there's a difference between managers and workers from the mine's perspective. The second thing is, it told people that if something goes wrong, if they can hide it, because they're going to get into trouble. And the real message was, if something goes wrong at home, it's okay. Just don't do it at work. Because at work, and because unfortunately that's what happened, is that the manager was going, now our safety record there's a blemish on it. It's, we're going to lose our frequency rate. We're going to lose our bonus. And so again, it sends this message that it's not about people so much as about getting bonuses. Now, as I said before, I know the managers. It was never their intention, it was never their desire, but I also know many of the workers, and when I'm talking to them, they go, this was their experience. So how do you react to a crisis? How do you react to a situation? Because it reveals so much about who you are and what you really believe. In Todd Conklin's book, he mentioned a story where in the States they have these traveling circuses and theme parks, and typically within these experiences is the roller coaster ride is your biggest money spinner, and it's the biggest attraction. And it just happened that on this particular situation is, on the first day, the guy that was operating the roller coaster, he was sharing a noise, and it made him a little bit uncomfortable. And he kind of looked into the mechanics of the levers, and it seemed okay. So on the first night, let's say it was a Wednesday night, I can't remember exactly, is he allowed it to continue, but on the Thursday, it really started to make him uncomfortable. Again, he looked at it, he examined it, and he wasn't happy, but it didn't seem like anything particularly was going to go wrong. But on the Friday, he just knew something is up, and he decided, he made this call, he's going to shut down the ride. And now he's under immense pressure because this is the money spinner and it's the Friday night. So this is the biggest event. This is where they're going to make the most money. And he makes this call to go, you know what, I'm going to shut down the ride. And immediately there's a lot of pressure, and they bring out experts to come and have a look at the roller coaster and the mechanics behind it. And as they did the investigation, as they found out that the teeth had worn in the locking mechanism had worn down, and in the course of that evening, if they let that roller coaster run, it would have broken, and at best the ride would have come to a stop. A worst case scenario is that people not only would have got injured, but they could have died. And because of him taking this bold stand and go, you know what, we're not going to allow this ride to continue, is that obviously the company, they celebrated him. They said, you know, this is fantastic. And the mayor of that town, he actually created an award for him, and they had kind of a bit of a celebration, and he was given the key to the town. And it was so fantastic. It's sending this message that you can stop something when you experience it to be unsafe. Then Todd Conklin asked in his book and said, I wonder what would have happened to that person is when they bought out the engineers, if they didn't find something wrong. Would he still have been celebrated that he made this stand, that he said, you know what, I'm uncomfortable, I think something is amiss here, and I want to put people's lives, I want to make that a priority, and he stops the show. Would that still have been celebrated? Or is it only celebrated because it turned out in the right way? And so what is really important to us? How do we handle those moments when someone says, you know what, sir, I know we want to do this, I know we want to achieve it, but I sense maybe we must take a different tact. Maybe in a corporate situation, if someone comes up with an innovative idea and they go for it and it doesn't work out, do we celebrate the fact that they tried something new? Do we celebrate the fact that they were giving their all, that they were thinking out of the box? Or if it doesn't go our way, if it doesn't go according to plan, do we shoot them down and go, you know, you idiot, how could you have done that? Because if our response is the latter, is it sends a message. Don't take a chance. Don't do something innovative because you're going to get into trouble. And then what happens is our people become stunted. They don't try new things. They don't take healthy risks when it comes to I'm not talking in a safety environment now, I'm talking within a company situation. And then that whole learning culture comes to an end. And then as leaders, they're frustrated and go, yeah, my people don't have a buy-in and they're not committed. And I go, but it's because what we have created. Or are people enthusiastic as they trying out new things? Is they giving their all because we have created that environment? The next one has to do with our allocation of resources. And again, I smirk, not because it's funny, but because I've got so many experiences where I hear managers at meetings, they go, people are our biggest assets and people are number one, and you know, without people we would never succeed. And then I ask the question, well, when last did you speak to someone outside of the management circle? And then, you know, so often, not always, but many times as managers say, well, I don't have time for that. I've got too many emails. There's too many meetings. And so guess what? That is the message that is sent, is because their resources is put into meetings. And so you can always tell what is important to you in two areas. The first is, where do you put your money and where do you spend your time? And so if we say that really building relationships and motivating our people and investing in our people is a priority to us, it's a real value, is then are you putting money into that? Are you making sure that they have the best equipment, that they have the resources to do their jobs? Do they have enough for training and education? Have we put in enough resources for people to do healthy risk, to be innovative? And it's possible that something will go wrong, but it's okay because we have budgeted for that. Or we're so busy in meetings that we're never getting out to our people. So it's one thing to say we believe in people. It's one thing to say we care about people. It's one thing to say we want to invest in people and we want to have relationships with them. But at the end of the day is, where are you spending your time and where are you spending your resources? And again, we're in the safety community, is what we find is that safety is number one, but guess which budget gets cut so often the first? And so when there needs to be some safety training, no, there's no money for this, but then there's money for other things, and we go, wait a minute, here's a contradiction. If safety is truly a value, there will be the time and the money that will go towards that. So often with safety managers is we have things like your visible felt leaderships or your walkabouts, and in many minds is that there would be, you've got to do 1 a week or 3 a month, something like that. Each mind has a different rhythm. And how many times that I hear managers go, well, how many did you do this week? How many did you do this month? No, I didn't have time. And I go, there's the problem. Is it showing what is the true value? Then the one that really helps cement this is, what do we reward and what do we punish? So what do we celebrate? When someone does well, do we reward that and say, that is fantastic, that is awesome? Or do we kind of just ignore it? I hear comments like this: praise is for puppies and children. People get paid to do their jobs. Why should I reward them for that? Why should I say thank you? Now again, I'm not into throwing money. I don't believe that that's an effective reward system. But what do we reward? And how do we express our thanks? How are we saying, this is a good job, this is what we're looking for? And what do we say, you know what, this is unacceptable? And again, I see this in many ways. How it is manifested is so often because we haven't defined our leading indicators, what will help us to be successful, how do we take a proactive approach, is then what happens is when we get to 1 million LTI-free hours, is then there will be some sort of celebration. You know, we'll have a Bri pack and a Coke, or a half a day off, or what it might be. And so while that is great in theory, is many times what happens is that on the third day an incident takes place, and then people say, well, why should I work harder? Why should I put in an effort? Because we've already lost our reward. And so are we rewarding lagging indicators, or are we leading indicators that we start to reward the right attitude, we start to reward the right behaviors? Wouldn't it be fantastic if people started to come in and present near misses, or if they've made a mistake and go, you know what, sir, that was my fault. And even though we don't celebrate the mistake, and there should be consequences for it, is that we start to celebrate the reporting, is that we are holding each other accountable. So what are we rewarding? The other side is, where are we holding people accountable? The fact of the matter is, if we see someone taking a shortcut, are we saying, wait a minute, that's not our culture. We don't accept that here, and there's some sort of consequences to that. Again, if I can go to the sales environment, if someone is treating the client with disrespect, if they're rude, do we just ignore that, or we bringing them into account and say, we don't function in this manner. We treat our client in a different way. And again, it's so unfortunate, but in one particular mind, what I saw is that a certain individual from an ExCo level, he resigned, and they were looking for a new ExCo member, and so they went to all their GMs, and what did they do is they chose the person who had the best production rate. But everyone knew that this guy really didn't care about safety. He would push production at any cost. Everyone knew about it. And when they promoted him, he says, that's what it's all about. It's only about production, safety. Just please don't get injured. But it's actually not so important to us, because we promote people who meet production targets whether they care about safety or not. And so we've got to be looking, again, because not all of us are in the safety environment, go, what are we holding people account? How are we disciplining people in a way that it's not cutting off their enthusiasm, it's not cutting off their energy to be innovative, but also that we aren't accepting unacceptable behaviors. We're not accepting how we interact with clients, or how we treat one another, or when we take shortcuts, we go, no, that's unacceptable. And all of this sends a message. Now, the second last one that I quickly want to refer to is, what do we deliberately coach? What are we putting our attention to in the behaviors that we want to see? So when we do have meetings and people start to interact with one another, are we coaching people in those situations and saying, this is what we want to see? And if we see people respond in a certain way, are we calling them aside and go, have you thought about this? how we could have handled it in a different way. How can we be more effective? And we start to mentor them around specific behaviors, around specific attitudes that we would like to see that they demonstrate, that they are living out. And so there's something about us knowing to go, I'm not just leaving people's development to chance, but there's bringing people aside, there's coaching, there's mentoring around very specific. We have identified them. These are the behaviors, these are the attitudes that is going to get us the success that we want. And then the last one really kind of brings this together, and most probably the most important one is how are we leading by example? And I've never been to any company where this is not a catchphrase, or practice what you preach and lead by example. And well, I mean, that's why I'm talking about it, because it is so fundamental, but we can talk about it all we want. But what are we living? And so if we want people to be on time, are we on time? If we want people to keep the speed limit, are we keeping the speed limit? Are we expecting people to work safely? Are we taking shortcuts? If we want our people to interact with clients with respect and with something of an openness and finding new and innovative ways, are we doing that? Because it's irrelevant what we preach. People see what we practice. Well, if we take what we talked about in session 6, as well as these points, I really hope that these are giving you some practical handles, something that you can use on a day-to-day basis that will take your leadership to the next level. And as we go through the next months and we continuously look at some of the leadership practices, the leadership behaviors that are really going to help us in growing our capacity, if you have some success stories, if you've got examples that you can say, Brett, this has really helped out, or maybe some of the challenges and disappointments that you have, won't you be so kind as to either respond on the website or send me an email, because I would love to be able to share these success stories. And maybe if you've got some questions, is pose it, and then we can discuss it as we go on. Until then, be kinetic.